Where I grew up as a child, behind our house, was the end of town. It was nothing but open valley floor and sparse patches of forest. I was always a very explorative child, a trait I got from my dad, and constantly found myself spending the summers exploring all the land behind our house had to offer. 3 particular places come to mind when I start reading. There was an open field about 2 miles from my parents' house. There are 3 very large oak trees, formed a peculiar triangle. I've been there many times before, and with each visit there was this odd odour that hung in the air. I would only notice inside the large triangle of the trees. I later in life learned that the smell was of death. One of the last times I ever made my way to those trees was when I stumbled upon a pile of dead ducks. It must have been at least 50 or 60 dead ducks in the middle of the trees. I didn't know where they had come from or who had put them there. There weren't any lakes close by, and no roads led to the site. It wasn't until my late teens that I saw a similar pile of dead ducks out in the canals that bordered my hometown. I came to find out from a friend that it was some sort of local cult that performed the killings and pilings of the ducks. My second experience took place a mile or so away from the oak trees. It was an abandoned farm that I only visit one time. On the property was a white 2-bedroom farmhouse, wrap-around porch, dinner bell, red trim, lots of windows. Adjacent to the house was a very depleted barn. As I entered the house, what appeared to be a hunter came walking around the corner from the kitchen, rifle in hand. He was just over 6 feet tall, short brown hair, moustache and beard, dressed in plaid, long sleeve and jeans and boots. He was very nice and introduced himself as Jim, and he said he was hunting rabbits in the area. He began to tell me about the house, the barn and the family that lived there. He said the family just up and abandoned the farm one day, and were never seen again. They left all their belongings and took nothing with them. This was clearly evident in the house. We walked out to the barn, where he showed me an old black and white photos of the farm and the family. I couldn't believe anything was just left behind. Well, we said our farewells, and he invited me and my parents to join him and his wife for dinner sometime. He said you could see his house from behind the barn, and that he was just a couple of miles away. As I was walking away from the barn, I got this terrible nagging feeling. Something in my head was telling me to go back to that house and look around some more. I went back, snooped around a bit, and realized Jim was gone. I looked all over the place, outside and in the barn. I walked behind the barn to see if I could see Jim walking back to his home. There was nothing. Nobody was around. I looked in the direction that Jim told me he lived, and there was nothing. A couple of days later I braved up enough to look for Jim's house. I found it all right, or at least where a house once stood. All that was left was a burnt-out foundation. There was nothing else around this area, just plain fields and low grass. Lastly, because I was a kid and had to share these stories and places with my dad, we went out one weekend so I could show him what I saw. I took him to the 3 oak trees and confirmed to him the smell of death in the area. We went to the abandoned farm, followed by a short walk to the burnt-out foundation. My dad was very intrigued by all this because he had similar, but much more frightening experiences when he was my age at that time. We ran into some Union Pacific Railroad tracks and decided to take them in a roundabout way back home. On our way we found another abandoned, or so we thought, shanty. We started walking towards it. When about 50 yards from the door, every fibre of my being was screaming at the top of my lungs, "Stop!" My dad got a little stiff-legged, and before I said anything, told me we should just leave this one alone. I never could make myself go anywhere near that shanty run-down place. I've been out there a couple of times since, and it's still standing, and to this day I can't get close to it. The feelings get so overwhelming, sometimes I can't even stand to look at the structure.